Let's talk about something that every web developer needs to understand: the DOM. I believe you've heard people saying things like DOM manipulation or access the DOM elements, right? But what exactly is this mysterious DOM? DOM simply stands for Document Object Model. But don't let the name scare you. It is just a fancy way of saying, hey JavaScript, here is a map of everything inside this web page, so you can read, change, or even remove stuff. Think of your web page like a family tree. At the top, you've got the document. Then under it, you have branches like HTML, head tag, and body tag. And then inside the body tag, you have smaller branches, maybe a div, a p tag, or image, and so on. That tree structure is what we call the DOM tree. Let me demonstrate using this simple HTML code. And there is a preview. This is what we call the document. The entire web page is the document. And inside we have the HTML tag. In the HTML we have the head tag and then the body. And within the body we have nested tags. For example, h1 and p tag here. And we can inspect the DOM using the browser. So here I'm going to right click on the page and then click on the inspect. And then click on the element. As you can see, our HTML code, which is inside our browser. So this is what we call the DOM tree. As you can see, it is a nested HTML tags. And through DOM, we can manipulate the elements. For example, I can change the content here. For example, I can click on that and then edit, and I'm going to say that welcome to, instead of DOM, I can say that welcome to CSS, and then hit enter. As you can see that it has been updated. With the power of the DOM, we can change the content on our web page, or we can delete, or we can even change the style. So assuming that I want to change this style, for example, welcome to CSS, I will click on that and then click on the styles. In here, I'm going to say color is equal to red. As you can see that it has been changed. That's the power of the DOM. And I can also add font size 90 pixels. As you can see, it has been updated. That's the power of the DOM. Instead of us manually updating the DOM, we are going to use JavaScript to change the styles, and we can even add new element onto the page with the help of JavaScript. The takeaway here is that the DOM represents the entire web page with nested elements. And with the help of the DOM, we can add new element or content to our existing web page, or we can even change the style, as you can see on the screen. This is why the DOM is the heartbeat of web interactivity. When you click a button, scroll, or type in a form, JavaScript listens to those actions through the DOM and reacts accordingly. So to wrap up, the DOM is a tree-like model of your web page. It lets JavaScript read, update, or delete parts of the page. It is what makes your website interactive and live. In this section, we are going to dive into DOM, which is Document Object Model. Let's continue the next video. Let's begin with DOM elements and methods. So what is DOM element? We know that DOM simply means Document Object Model. That represents your entire web page like a family tree. What about the element? Element simply means that tags and then the content plus any attribute is what we call the element. For this code, I can say that the h1 here plus the content is an element. Likewise, p tag with this content is an element. And method simply means that the actions that we can perform on this element is what we call the methods. And this is a preview from the previous video. Let me reload back to default. So for this one, how can we allow JavaScript to interact with this one by adding new content and also remove or change the style? And we can achieve this one through the DOM. So before we can allow JavaScript to interact with this element by performing operations like deleting, updating, the first step is we need to understand what are the DOM elements. Alright, at this point you understand what the DOM is, which is a big family tree of your web page. So let's learn how to actually talk to it, because knowing the DOM is very important as a web developer. But knowing how to access and control its elements, that is where the real magic happens. Let's say that we want to work on these elements, for example, the H1, the P tag, or even a button or image. The first step is we need to select it. And JavaScript gives us few different ways to do that using what is called DOM elements. And here are the most common ones that you will see all the time. The first one is getElementById and getElementByClassName, querySelector, and querySelector all. We are going to take each of these methods to show you how to select elements and then also perform some operations on it through the DOM. The next video, let's begin with the first method, and that is getElementById. Let's start with the first method, and that is getElementById. Have you ever wanted to grab one specific element from your web page, like say a button or heading, and tell JavaScript, hey, go find that one and do something cool with it? That is exactly what getElementById does. It is like JavaScript GPS for locating a single element using its unique ID. Every element in your HTML can have an ID, and remember, an ID must be unique on that page. You can think of it like a student ID number. Only one person in the class has that number. Let's have some code example here. I have created a folder called DOM, and then this is a preview in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to have one file called getElementById.html. We are going to demonstrate the getElementById. So here I'm going to have some HTML skeleton and H1. I'm going to say that welcome to my page. And let me have one more. This is going to be P tag here. And for the paragraph, it goes like this: JavaScript is fun. And let's have a button. I'm going to call this one as click me, like that. And this is the goal. First of all, we want to change the content of welcome to my page to something like hello developer. Let's have a preview, or I can open it right from here. And this is a preview. The main goal here is that we are going to use JavaScript to change this content to hello developer, and also change the color, the font size, the background color, and the content itself. And lastly, we're going to add some event. When a user click on this text, we are going to trigger something. So the first step is that we need to select those elements. So back here, since we are going to use getElementById, we are going to provide unique identifiers to each of these elements. So here ID is equal to, I'm going to call this one as main-title. And for this one, the ID is equal to description. And then the ID for this one also is equal to change btn. It is time for us to work on these elements. Therefore, we will need JavaScript. So here, I'm going to call this one as script.js. And we need to link the JavaScript in our HTML SRC, which is script.js. And let me reload. Perfect. Back to the JavaScript. We are going to select the individual element, and note that we are going to use getElementById. So back here, I'm going to have a comment as access each element by its unique ID. And it goes like this. I'm going to assign to a variable called title, and I always prefer to append el, which means element, which is equal to document dot getElementById. We have a lot of these methods, for example, querySelector, querySelector all, but let's begin with the getElementById. And there's a function. We are going to pass in the value of the ID that we want to select. So if you look at the HTML, I want to select this one here. So I'm going to provide the value of that ID in this function as that. This is what we call the DOM method. So here, if I log the title element back to the web page, reload, and then open the console, inspect, and then console here, as you can see that we have the HTML element being logged, which means that we have selected this particular element here. And I'm going to select the rest of these ones. So here, I'm going to copy and paste. And the next one is equal to description element. And the value for this one is description. And the last one is going to be the change btn, which is the button. I'm going to remove this and provide. Make sure to use the same value of your ID that you specified in the element, otherwise it will not work. So here, I'm going to change this one to button element. Perfect. So we are done with the accessing or selecting the element. The next step is DOM manipulation. We are going to change the element that we have selected. For example, the welcome, the JavaScript here, and then the button. So let's change the text content. To do that, on the element selected, on that we have these methods. For example, text content. And we use this one to change the content on a web page. So instead of this one here, I'm going to say that hello developer. Save it and reload. As you can see that I have used JavaScript to change that content. Apart from the content, we can also modify the color. So title dot style dot here, we're going to use any CSS property, but it must be camel casing. For color, it goes like this, and I'm going to say red. Save it and then reload, and the color has been changed. And we can also change the background color. Just make use of background, and then we have the IntelliSense. I'm going to change the color to say yellow. Reload, and it has been changed. Likewise, the description. So here, I'm going to take the description dot text content. I'm going to change to something like learning DOM manipulation is super fun. And let's see. There we go. And we can also add event to these elements. We have a video to talk about events, but for the meantime, let's go by this. The main goal here is that when a user click on this, we are going to change some elements here. So on the button element dot on click, if you want to bind an event to an element, we use what is called on click, which is equal to function, and then inside here we're gonna take the individual elements. For example, the description dot style dot color. I'm gonna change this one to blue, and description dot style dot font weight, I'm gonna say, and then the title element dot text content, I'm gonna say that you have clicked me. It's supposed to be semicolon like that. If I click on this button, three things are going to happen. First, it is going to change the description color to blue, and change the font weight to bold, and change the title here to you have just clicked me. Moment of truth. And there we go. We have these elements being updated. And this is possible because of the DOM. The takeaway here is that understand how to select the element by using getElementById, and also how to manipulate by using some CSS properties, and how to bind those elements using an event handler called onClick. To recap, we use getElementById to select one element using its unique ID. You can then change the text, style it, or react to actions, for example, onClick. And if the ID doesn't exist, it returns null, meaning nothing found. This is your first rare step in making static pages interactive. In the next video, we will go beyond one element. We will learn how to target groups of elements using getElementByClassName, because sometimes you want to talk to everyone wearing the same t-shirt, not just one person. This is where getElementByClassName comes in. Now that you can grab one element using getElementById, let's take it a step further. What if you want to grab multiple elements like all buttons, all cards, or all paragraphs with the same class name? That is where getElementByClassName comes in. It is like saying, hey JavaScript, find everyone wearing the same uniform. The getElementByClassName method returns a collection, meaning that it can grab many elements that share the same class. It doesn't give you one element, but a list of elements that you can loop through and manipulate. Let's have some code examples. I have placed each of these concepts into its own folder. This is what we did in the previous video, and this is what we're going to work on. And these files are empty JavaScript and the HTML with no content, and I have linked up the JavaScript. And this is a preview. So let's begin to have the following HTML structure. I'm going to have h2, and then I'm going to say that HTML basics, and let me provide a class which is equal to course, and copy and paste. This one is CSS styling, and the class is course, and lastly JavaScript DOM, and then a button with ID which is equal to highlight btn. I'm going to call this one as highlight all, and let me reload, and this is what we have. So first of all, we're going to select the element. So back to the JavaScript, I'm going to have a comment as select all element with class equal to course. And to do that, we're going to use const courses element is equal to document dot get element by class name, and the name of the class is called course. With this one, if we log the course element, let's open the console here, reload, and as you can see that we have it as a collection with 3 items. And if I open it, we have the individual element being selected. And since this one looks like an array, we can access the individual element. For example, the first h2, which is the HTML basics, which means that the first index, which is this one, represents the HTML basics. The next one is the CSS styling. The last one is the JavaScript DOM. So here I'm going to access the first element directly. So to do that, I'm going to have a comment as access the first element directly, and it goes like this: courses element, then the first index dot style dot color, which is equal to red, and reload, and we have the first element being set to red. I can also change the second element by using the first index to, let's say, pink, reload, and it worked. Let me change to purple. And then the last one, which is the index 2, change the color to something like yellow. Reload, and think the yellow is not that visible. What about blue? All right. And we can also change the second one content, which is the CSS styling. And to do that, let me add a comment as change the content. And I want to change this, the first index, which is CSS styling, to CSS styling updated. So to do that, we're going to take the courses, the first index, then dot text content as CSS styling updated. And let's see, reload, and indeed it has been updated. We can also loop through all the elements and change the CSS properties. I'm going to say that loop through all elements, and it goes like this. We're going to use for here, and then let I, we are using for loop, I is equal to 0. If I is less than the course element dot length, then we are going to increase the incrementer as 1, and inside here we have access to the individual element. If I log the element here, let's have a look, reload back to the console, and we have the element as their index. Therefore, we can access it by using the array. So here, if I want the first one, I'm going to take the courses array and then pass in the index. Then the style is, dot font weight. The camel casing change to bold. And I want to update the padding also to 10 pixels. And then the border also 2 pixels solid hashtag 222s. And if I reload, let's see, and it has been updated. We can also add some interactivity to the button. When the button is being clicked, I want to highlight all of them. So to do that, I have already selected the, I have to select the button here by using the ID. So I'm going to copy this, the ID name, so const btn or btn element is equal to document.getElementById, and the ID is this. So here I'm going to bind event to the button. Let me have a comment here, and it goes like this: the button element dot on click, which is function here. And when the button is being clicked, I want to loop through. So I'm going to copy this one, paste, and just change some properties here. Instead of font weight, change this one to background color to hashtag FFEB3B, and the color to something like 000, and remove this one. Okay, so if I reload and then click on highlight, as you can see that it worked. To wrap up, the getElementByClassName selects multiple elements with the same class name. It returns an HTML collection like an array, and you can use a loop to manipulate each element. This method is perfect for styling, updating text, or adding event to groups of elements. And this method gives you group power, and that is how you scale your DOM control. In the next video, we're going to use a modern and even flexible way to do same thing by using querySelector all. It is basically the all-in-one tool for element selection, and you are gonna love it. Let's get into that. We are moving into the modern world of DOM selection. You have learned how to grab one element with getElementById and multiple ones with getElementByClassName. querySelector is like a universal remote. It can target any element on your page using CSS selectors. So here is the deal. querySelector always returns the first element that matches the selector that you give it. And the best part is that you can use exact same syntax you already know from CSS like ID, classes, or even tags like P or H1. In short, querySelector can be used to select elements either with ID or class. So I have already provided a folder called querySelector with some starter HTML and then empty JavaScript. I have already linked up the JavaScript, and this is a preview. I'm going to use h1 with ID equal to main title. This is a shortcut way of adding class or ID to an element. And I'm going to say welcome to my website. Copy and paste and use class for this. The class is called info, and the content goes like this. Learning JavaScript is fun. I'm going to have one more element, I'm going to change this one to ID, and I'm going to say info as well. And the content goes like, you can change the DOM dynamically. And lastly, a button with ID equal to action-btn. I'm going to say that click me. And let's have a look at the preview. Good. Let me change this one to p tag, similar to this one. I want to have only one, h1, reload. Good. Looking at this HTML structure, we have ID and then class. If you want to select the ID, we can use getElementById. What about the class? This is where querySelector comes in. For querySelector, either it is an ID or class, it can be used to select that. That is why there is a modern way of selecting elements. So now back to the JavaScript, we are going to select the element. I'm going to select the h1 with ID equal to main title. And this is how it goes when using the querySelector. Const title is equal to document. The document is the entire web page. On that, we have the method called querySelector. And for querySelector, I'm going to pass in the value either for ID or class. If it is an ID, we're going to use hashtag and then the value. But in case we are selecting a class and want to use the querySelector, we're going to use period or dot. So here, let me append the element at the end. So using this syntax simply means that we are selecting by ID just like in CSS. So on the title element selected, we can change the color as before, dot color, which is equal to red, and reload, and we have it as welcome to my website. As before, we can also change the font size style dot font size equal to 3 rem, reload, and it has increased. We can also change the content as title element dot text content is equal to hello developer, reload, and it worked. This is how we can select by using the ID. What about the class? We are going to select this element with class equal to info. So below here, let me copy this comment, and then I'm going to say that const first paragraph element is equal to document dot querySelector, and the class is called info, For class, we're going to use dot or period and then the value, which is info here. So with this one, I'm going to change the style color as first paragraph element is equal to dot style dot color is equal to blue. And let's see, reload, and indeed it is blue. We can also change the font weight as before. I believe you've seen the pattern now. What about if you want to select an element using a tag? If you look at the button here, I'm going to remove the ID here and we can select an element by using a tag. So here we have a button without an ID or class, but with querySelector, we can select the element by a tag. Copy this comment. I'm going to say that by tag name. Example, p tag, h1, and others. So here I'm going to copy this, or even let me start from scratch. Const button element is equal to document dot query selector, and then the tag name. As you can see here with the IntelliSense, we have all the tag names. I'm going to use button, and I want to change the background color of the button as button element dot style dot background color, which is equal to hashtag ff9800. And let's see, reload, and indeed it has selected that, and we can add some interactivity to it as we did before, which is equal to button dot on click. We have a section to talk about event, but for the meantime, let's use the school old way for adding event. So here, the title element dot text content is equal to, alright, so let me reload and click on the button. As you can see that it has changed the title element to button clicked. Alright, notice what we just did. We selected an element using an ID with this value, which is this one here, and we also selected a class using the .info, which is this, and lastly a tag name, which is a button, which is this one. And for querySelector, it always grabs the only first element that matches its criteria. So in case we have one more element, I'm gonna copy this and change the content to welcome to CSS. With this one, you may be thinking that, well, it also pick this one here, and that is the second one, which is h1 with welcome to CSS. If I reload, as you can see that it didn't apply to the second one. It always get applied to the first matching criteria. Think of querySelector like asking Google, hey, show me the first restaurant that matches my search. That is what it does. The first match wins. So to wrap up, querySelector select the first matching element. You can use CSS selectors like ID, class, or tag. Alright everyone, remember how querySelector grabs the first element that matches your selector. Well, what if you want to grab all of them? That is where querySelector all comes in. It is like sending a group message instead of a private text. You can use it to select multiple elements at once and apply styles, text changes, and interactions across the board. The querySelector all method lets you select every element that matches a CSS selector. It returns something called a node list, kind of like an array, which means you can easily look through it using for each and perform actions on each item. Let's see how it works in a rare example. I have provided a folder called querySelector all with the starter HTML, which is this one, with the following element with class equal to course, and then a button with ID equal to highlight button, and this is a preview. You can pause this video and type these HTML tags in case you want to follow along. Alright, so let's continue. So let's get back to the JavaScript here. The main goal here is we're going to select the element with a class equal to course, and it's going to select all of these ones. In case we are using querySelector, it is going to match the first one, but with querySelector all, it is going to select all the elements with a class equal to course. And note that this one returns what is called node list, which is like an array, as we have already said. So back to the JavaScript, in here, select all elements with a class equal to course, and it goes like this: const courses element is equal to document dot query selector all, and the value is equal to dot course. In case here is an ID, this one here, then note that we're going to use hashtag for ID, but for class we're going to use dot. So let me undo, back to class. So with this one, if we log the courses element, let me check the console, and I can change the position of the console by clicking on this icon here, either at the bottom. I'm going to reload and let's have a look. We have it as node list with these items: the first one, second, third, and fourth. The first one represents the first element, and that is the HTML basics. The next one, and follows like that. So with this one, we can loop through using for each method. So back here, instead of logging, I'm going to say that loop through each element using for each. So here as loop, and it goes like this: courses element dot for each. Then it takes in a callback function. In the callback, we have access to the individual element as a course, and then the index, which means at which position that the element occurred. So here we're going to change the course dot style dot color equal to hashtag 333, and then copy and paste. Background color is equal to hashtag F2 F2 F2, and then padding 10 pixels, then margin bottom of 8 pixels, border radius of say 5. Alright, so with this one, reload. Then for each is not a function, so it's supposed to be uppercase E here for each. Reload. As you can see that it has applied to the element. Let me change the color to something like purple to make it more visible. And indeed, it has applied to all the elements at a go without selecting each of these. That is the power of the querySelector all. So to wrap up, querySelector all selects all matching elements, and this one returns a node list which supports for each method, and also perfect for applying changes to multiple elements at once. This is one of those methods we use all the time, especially when styling lists, cards, or buttons across your page. Alright, you have learned how to grab and manipulate elements in the DOM. Up until now, you were the one telling the web page what to do, but what if the page could respond to the user instead? What if it could say, hey, someone clicked me, or the mouse just hovered over that button? That is where the DOM event comes in. Think of events as triggers, moments when something happens on your web page: a click, a key press, a scroll, or even a page load. JavaScript can listen for those triggers and react instantly. That is how buttons pop, menus open, and forms validate in real time. Without events, your website is just like a picture. With events, it becomes alive. And here is a tiny example. In here, if I click on the button called click me, let's see the event. And it says that you just click the magic button. Simple, right? The moment you click that button, JavaScript reacts. That is an event in action. Think of DOM events like sensors in a smart home. When you open the door, the light turns on. When you walk past a sensor, music starts playing. Your web page does the same. It listens, detects, and then responds. So in this section, we will explore how to detect and respond to user actions like clicks and key presses. Alright, so now you know that events are what makes websites interactive. But how does JavaScript actually listen for those events? That is where our superstar comes in. Add event listener. This method allows you to tell JavaScript, hey, whenever this happens, do that. It is like teaching your web page to respond. And here is a formula. I'm going to have the element. The element can be any element being selected by using either getElementById or querySelector or querySelector or. And then on that element, we're going to append what is called add event listener. And then as a function call, you're going to pass in two things. The first one is going to be the event type. And then second one going to be a callback function. And it can be arrow function or normal function syntax. This function is basically saying that when a certain event happens, for example, click, key down, mouse over, run this function, which is a reaction. Let's have some rare example. So I have already created a folder called DOM event example 1, and there is the HTML structure. Let me open it, and this is what we have. And I'm gonna have some structure here, a button with content as click me, and then provide ID equal to click dash btn, then input with type equal to text, and then ID equal to name dash input. Remove the name here, provide placeholder as type your name, and then p tag with ID equal to output. I'm gonna say with empty content here. Save it, reload. The main goal here is that you're gonna select all the elements which are button, input, and then the paragraph. And then you're gonna add some events to the button. When the button is being clicked, we are going to place some content onto the page in between the p tag here. At the moment, it is empty. We are going to use JavaScript to add some content onto the page dynamically. So back to the JavaScript, I'm going to remove this, and the first step is the selecting of the element. And it goes like this. The first element, which is the button, as button element is equal to document dot querySelector. This one is ID, therefore we're going to use hashtag, which is click dash btn. And let's have one for the input as input element, which is equal to name input. If you look at the input field here, the ID is equal to name input. So change this one to name input. And then the output here as output element, and then change this one to, let me have a look, it is called output. So now you're gonna add the first type of event as click event, and we can add any kind of event to any element. Let's begin with the button element, which is this. On that, we can use the onClick method, which is this, and we have used this one before, but we have a modern way of adding events, which is called add event listener. As we made mention, this one takes in two things. The first one is the event type, either click. If I make use of double quote or single quote, these are all the event types that we can use. We are going to use the click event, and then command a callback function. So here you can use normal function syntax as this, or you can use arrow function. I prefer to use arrow function. In between here, we can then manipulate the DOM. So here when a user click on the button, we are going to add some content in between the p tag here, which is this one. At the moment, it is empty. So here, back to the JavaScript, output element dot text content is equal to you clicked the button. And let's style the output. So output element dot style dot color is equal to crimson. Alright, so let's try out, reload. If I click on click me, as you can see that we have a dynamic content from JavaScript through the DOM. We also have input event, and this event works on input fields. If you look at our HTML, we have only one input field, and this is a preview. The main goal here is that when a user interacts with the input field, we are going to trigger an event, and the name of the event is called input. So back here, I'm going to take the input element, which is this one that has been selected, and then it goes like this: input element dot add event listener, and then pass in the event type, which is called input. Once again, this event will be triggered when an input field is being interacted with. For example, every keystroke, the event will be triggered. Then the callback function, inside here, I'm going to log, for example, input field triggered. With this one, let me reload and open the console. Reload, and if I start typing, as you can see that the console log are being logged in as that. So instead of console login, we can do something, and that is we want to show what a user is typing in the input field and show it on the page. So back here, instead of console login, I'm gonna say that the output element dot text content. We want to show what a user is typing in the input field. So in here, we're going to assign to, I'm going to say hello, comma, and then inject the dynamic value from the input field. And we can access what the user is providing in the input field as input element dot value. So here as input element dot value. With this one, reload. And if I start typing, for example, Emmanuel, as you can see that it is being displaying as that. And comma, or let me add my full name as that. A full stack. This is what we call input event. Apart from the input event, we also have mouse over event. So here, when a user hover the cursor on the button, which is this one here, which is hover event, we are going to trigger something. So I'm going to take the button element, which is this one. Let me add a comment as mouse over event, and we can apply it to any element, but let's apply it on the button as button element dot add event listener. The event type here is called mouse over, and then the callback function. When a user hover the cursor on the button, we want to change the background color and then the color on the button. So here I'm going to take the button element dot style dot background color is equal to red, for example, and then change the text on the button as color. I'm going to use white. All right, and reload. Move the cursor on the button. As you can see that it worked. But if I move the cursor away, nothing is happening. And this is what we want to achieve. When a user moves the cursor on the button, the color has changed. When a user moves the cursor out from the button, we want to trigger an event by changing the background color to default. And to achieve that, we also have one more event called mouse out. So I'm going to copy this, paste, change this one to mouse out. And then instead of mouse over, it is going to be as mouse out. And then the background color, we want to change to hashtag 009688. And then the color as white. So moment of truth, reload. Hover changes out, it changed as well. So this is a pattern of using event type. We have a lot of them, but these are the common ones. Up to this point, you know how to listen to an event. But now, let's take it a step deeper. When an event happens, JavaScript doesn't just say, hey, something happened. It actually gives you a special object that contains tons of information about that event, like what was clicked, which key was pressed, or where it happened on the page. That object is called the event object. So every time an event is triggered, JavaScript automatically passes an event into your callback function. We usually name it event or just E, and you can access details like event type, event target, event key, event.clientX or client Y. So let's see it in action. I have a folder called events, and this is the HTML with no element on the page and then empty JavaScript. So let's have a simple HTML structure for the event. So in here, I'm going to have h2 with ID, and let's have an input with ID equal to name input. So here as input, I'm using emmet syntax, and then the name of the input is called name-input, and then hit enter. Apart from that, let's provide a placeholder. I'm going to say that type your name. And lastly, a button with ID equal to action button. So button, and then hashtag that represents an ID. The value of the ID is called action btn, and then hit enter. I'm going to say that click me. Alright, so reload. Once again, this is the logic. When an event is being fired, JavaScript gives us what is called the event object. And within that event object, we can access tons of properties or methods. So back to the JavaScript here, we are going to select all the elements. So here as, and let's begin with the title, which is this one here, as const title element is equal to document.querySelector. It is ID, therefore I'm going to use hashtag title and then copy and paste. This one is input element. The ID value is called name-input. And lastly, which is the last element, is equal to button element, and change the value as action-btn. Great. So it's time for us to use the event object. So here, let's begin with the click event. And then we're going to use the event object as using event object. And as before, I'm going to take the button element dot add event listener. The event type here is equal to click, and then the callback function as that. And here is the magic. We can access the event object by passing in what is called event here, or just E for event. Let me name it as event here. So if I log the event, let's see the magic, reload, and then open the console. When I click on the button, as you can see that the event has been triggered. If I open that, these are tons of properties and methods about the event that has been triggered, which is the click event. We can see that the Alt key was not pressed, altitude angle, which is this, client X and client Y. The detailed, as you can see, we have tons of properties here, and we can log the type of the event. So back here, this one is the entire event object, and we can also log the event type. So here as event dot type, and this one will log the type of event, which is click event. So let's check it out. Reload and then click, and indeed it is click event, which is this one here. And we can also know which element was clicked, and that is a target. So I'm gonna log, and we know that the target is the button, which is this one here. But let's try to log it, which is event.target. The target here is the button. All right, so reload and then click. As you can see that it has logged the entire element, which is the button element. And we can log something to the page by taking the title element dot text content is equal to backtick. I'm going to say that you clicked the button and then bracket here the event. I'm going to inject the event type $ curly braces event dot type. Instead of console login, we can display it on the page. Reload and then click, and you click the button, and the event is the click event. Apart from the click, we can also have event. Apart from the click event, we can also have input event. And for this one, I'm going to take the input element dot add event listener. The event type is called input, and then callback function. We have access to the event as E for short. And the main goal here is that we want to access what the user is typing in the input field. And we can access it on the event.target.value. So I'm going to log the event, which is e.target.value. And the value will show what the user is typing in the input field. When I say Emmanuel, or let me say CSS, as you can see that is being logged. And this is a concept that we used in the previous video to show what the user is typing onto the page. We can make it more meaningful by taking the title element dot text content, which is equal to backtick. I'm going to say that typing, then $ curly braces event.target.value. So instead of console login, I want to show it on the page. If I say that Node, as you can see, it worked. Node is a powerful framework or library, and I believe you've seen the trick now. And this is what we're going to use most often, which is this event object property, which is event.target.value. And apart from the input, we can also have key down event. And this one will detect which key was pressed. So I'm going to copy this and then paste. The comment here is key down. So the event type here is called key down. And this event will show which key was pressed. So I'm going to log by saying that key pressed. And then $ curly braces event.key, and this one will show the actual key. So reload. If I enter E, as you can see that E key was pressed. If I press P, P has been shown. Y, it has been shown. The %, it shows the asterisk. And as you can see the power of the event object. And we can make a condition that if the event.key is equal to enter. When the user presses the enter key, we are going to update the title as text content, which is equal to you pressed enter key. And let's change the color of the title as style.color is equal to blue. Reload and then If I hit enter, as you can see that we got the color being changed and you press the enter key. But if I enter any key apart from the enter, as you can see that we don't have it. Think of the event object like a report that JavaScript gives you every time something happens. It says, here is what just occurred, who did it, and where it happened. It is like detective file for every user interaction. So to wrap up, the event object gives you full details about any user interaction. For example, event.type.target.key. And always include the event in your function if you need to use it. With this knowledge, you can build smart, interactive, and responsive web experiences where every action can trigger a meaningful action. To practice all what you've learned under the DOM till this point, we are going to build mini projects. And the first project is called Color Changer Application. When a user clicks on the change background color, we're going to change the entire background color, and let's have a look. As you can see that it is being changing, and this is what we are going to build by using all the concepts that we have learned until this point. Let's get into it. To get started, I have created a folder called Color Changer App, and I've opened it using Visual Studio Code with two files, the HTML and then the JavaScript. So let's begin with the HTML. I'm going to scaffold by using the exclamation mark and then enter. The next step is that I need to link up the JavaScript by using the script tag and then SRC, which is the script here, and the title H1 Color Changer App. We're going to have two elements. The first element is going to be the button to click on to change the background color. So the button as with ID equal to change dash btn. The value is change background. We also want to display the color that has been changed. So here instead of button, I'm going to use span as that. And then the ID is equal to the color name. And reload, this is a preview. Let's add some simple CSS to it. So back in the head tag, I'm going to add what is called style. And then the entire body, I want to give it as text align, center, and then font family, area, and then margin top of 100 pixels, transition, background, color, and then the duration 0.5 seconds. The transition type is ease. And apart from the body, the button also, I want to style it by having padding 10 pixels and 20 pixels. Background color, hashtag 333, and color as white, border radius of 5 pixels, and cursor pointer. Let's see, good. And the color name, which is this ID color name, so here as hashtag color dash name, and display block, and then margin top of 20 pixels and color of hashtag 322s. Good. So we are done with the CSS. Let's focus on the main logic. So back to the JavaScript. First step is that we need to select the elements. And it goes like this. We're going to select two elements. One is the button and then the span, which is the color name. So const button element is equal to document dot getElementById. You can use querySelector. The ID is called change dash btn. And then the color name element is equal to the color name. We are done with the element selection. The next step is that we need to store the colors that we want to change to. Therefore, I'm going to say that list of colors to pick from. So here as colors as an array equal to array with the following colors. One is crimson, and then teal, gold. You can use hexacodes, and then purple and sky blue. So now we have the colors, or to make it simple, let's remove these ones and let's maintain these colors. You can include other colors of your choice. The next step is listen for button click. So take the button element and then add event listener, and this is where the magic is going to happen. When the user click on the button, we are going to change the background color. So I'm going to pass in the callback function as we did. In the callback here, we are going to pick a random color from the array. But before that, when a user click on the button, let's change the color. So here, I'm going to take the entire of the document, which is the entire page here is our entire document. And on that, we have the body. I want to style the body dot style dot background color. I'm going to change to red. So here, if I reload and then click on the change background, as you can see, the color has been changed. But this one only changes to only one color. And here is a clue. We want to randomly change the color when this button is being clicked. This is where a method called math.floor, and we're going to use a random method. So instead of this hard-coded value of the red, I'm going to say that pick a random color from the array. And to do that is equal to const. First of all, we want to get the index of the colors in the array. So here as random index, which is equal to math.floor. And .floor, you're going to pass in the math.random method. And then you're going to multiply by the length of the colors as colors.length. So with this one, if I log the random index of the colors, reload and open the console, when I click on the change background, as you can see that we have random colors, and we can grab the actual color in the array by using the index. So let me remove this one and let me come up here and say that const selected color is equal to the colors array, and then gonna grab by the index. So if I log the selected color, let's see, reload, and if I click on change background, as you can see that purple has been selected as that. So instead of using the hard-coded value of this red, we're going to assign to selected color, and that is it. Reload and then click on that. As you can see that it is being changing as that. Great. And the last step is that we want to show the color that has been picked onto the page. So instead of just this change background, we're going to update that. So here I'm going to say that update the color name text, and it goes like this. The color name element dot text content is equal to backtick current color is equal to the selected color. And let me change the color as color name dot style dot color is equal to the selected color to match. All right, reload and then click on that, and as you can see that the color has been changed. As you can see, instead of this, what about change everything to white? All right, let's see. and indeed we have the colors being changing as that. Alright guys, so this is how we can utilize the DOM manipulation to build a simple project. Now that we have the foundation, it is time for us to involve AI to help us to build complex projects by using what is called AI pair programming, where the AI is going to help us to build projects. Let's get into it.